Crises or crises. If you are a therapist and you have not taken a real vacation in 3 years and your income drops the week you get the flu, you need to hear something. You do not own a business. You built yourself a job. Welcome to the Clinical CEO podcast. Build the business your future self will thank you for. Welcome to the Clinical CEO. I'm Jessica Echeverry, and this is episode 1. I want to tell you who I've made this show for, because if you keep listening after today, I want you to know that I see you exactly where you are. You're a therapist. You're somewhere between your mid-30s and mid-40s. You built a practice on your own, and you're proud of it, and you should be, because most clinicians never make it out of agency work, and you did. You did the thing that most of your graduate school cohort talked about and never actually built. You hung your own shingle, you took the risk, you put your name on a lease, you bought your first EHR subscription, you filed the paperwork, you figured out how to get clients in the door and to keep them coming back. On paper, you're successful. Your family thinks you're successful. Your colleagues think you're successful. The people who knew you when you were working in the agency making $55,000 a year think you are living a different life than they are, and you're exhausted. Your caseload is full. You cannot take any more new clients. You're turning away referrals from people who you actually respect, referrals you would normally be grateful for, because you do not have anywhere to put another person. You cannot take a week off, because the week you take off is a week you do not get paid. Your fees have not moved in 2 years, maybe 3. Inflation has. The cost of the office lease has. Your billing platform raised its rates. Your EHR raised its rates. Your insurance panel reimbursement rates have gotten worse, not better. If your husband loses his job, you are in real trouble, and you know it. And you have not said it out loud to anyone, because saying out loud would make it feel real. You want more. You know you are capable of more. But every time that you sit down to work on the business, a client cancels and you need to fill the spot. A form needs to be filled out. Your EHR goes down, or you just don't have the energy because you've been giving away your energy all week to other people's crises. And the business, the thing that was supposed to give you freedom, somehow gave you the opposite of freedom. You're waking up at 3 a.m. thinking about billing. You're answering client emails on a Sunday night. You're the person who processes the intake form, sets up the telehealth link, reviews the insurance benefits, reconciles the payments, follows up on those shows, documents the sessions, writes the treatment plan, submits the claim, chases the denial, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, you're also the person who actually provides the therapy. You, my friend, are doing the work of 4 people and calling it a practice. Here's what I want to say to you. In episode 1, before I say anything, you are not broken, you are not lazy, and you are not bad at business. You have simply built yourself a job. And the job that you built is worse than one you have ever had. It does not pay when you're sick. It doesn't give you vacation. It does not promote you. It doesn't hire help for you. It doesn't even protect you from the worst impulses, like taking on one more client that you do not have room for because you feel guilty saying no. It does not protect you from yourself. You built yourself a job and then you hired the wrong boss to run it. That wrong boss is you, not the CEO version of you, but the clinical version of you. The version that was trained to sit with suffering, to conceptualize cases, to put the client first always, to never raise rates because someone might not be able to afford it and it might cause harm, to never take time off because someone might need you, to never say no because saying no feels like abandonment. That clinician is a magnificent therapist. She should absolutely be in the room with her clients. She is attuned, she's present, she holds space that most people could not hold for 5 minutes. And she holds it for 45 to 50 every day without flinching. She should not be running a company. The woman who is magnificent at holding a client in crisis is not the woman who should be deciding whether to raise fees in January. She is not the woman who should be deciding whether to drop an insurance panel. She is not the woman who should be deciding whether to take on a new hire. Those decisions require a different version of you. They require the CEO. And until you learn how to toggle between those two versions of yourself deliberately, the clinician in you is going to keep making CEO decisions with clinical logic. And the business is going to keep producing clinician outcomes when you need CEO outcomes. I'm going to say something now, and a lot during this podcast, that is going to sit with some of you wrong. I want you to sit with it anyways. The reason your practice is not growing is not that you do not know marketing. It's not that you don't have a great EHR. It's not that your niche is not specific enough. Those are the symptoms. The actual problem is that you have never, not once, sat down and asked yourself whether the thing you built is a business or whether it is a very elaborate way to pay yourself for clinical hours. There's a difference between those two things. Let me tell you what it is. A job pays you for your time. When you work, you get paid. When you don't work, you don't get paid. The ceiling of the job is the number of hours that you can bill in a week before you collapse. For most therapists, that ceiling is somewhere between 18 to maximum 30 clinical hours. Because anything above that and you start making mistakes, you just can't afford. And that ceiling just isn't negotiable. You can't out hustle it. You can't just one day decide to see 40 clients a week, because your clinical work will suffer, your body will suffer, your relationships will suffer, and your whole operation collapses inside of 6 months, if that. Now, a business pays you whether you work or not. A business has other people doing the work, or systems doing the work, or products doing the work. A business can be sold. A business can be left to your children. A business can run for a week while you are in Cali drinking coffee with me and looking at the mountains. If your practice cannot run for a week without you, you do not have a business, you have a job. A very expensive, very tiring, very respectable job, and a job that you are very, very good at, but it's a job. I want to give you a very specific picture of what I mean, because this is the part that most clinicians don't see until someone describes it to them. Imagine two clinicians. Both of them are good at their work. Both of them are licensed. Both of them have been in practice for about 10 years. Both of them have roughly the same income. Call it $150K a year. Clinician A sees about 25 clients a week, every week. Her income depends entirely on butts in the seats, including her own. When she gets the flu, she loses a week of income. When she goes on vacation, she loses 2 weeks of income, which is why she hasn't been on a real vacation for the last 4 years. When a client cancels, she either eats the cost or she scrambles to fill the spot. And let's be honest, she doesn't have the emotional bandwidth to scramble, so she usually eats it. Her practice is the chair she sits in for 25 hours a week. If she stops sitting in the chair, the practice stops. Now, clinician B has structured her practice differently. She sees 15 clients a week herself at a higher rate because she has done the work of raising her fees over the past 3 years. She has a small online group program that runs quarterly, bringing in a second revenue stream that does not require her to be on call. She supervises 2 interns who see their own clients under her supervision at a lower rate, which expands her practice's capacity without expanding her clinical hours. She has a virtual assistant who handles intakes, scheduling, and billing follow-up. Her practice continues to generate revenue when she takes a week off because the group practice is still running. The interns are still seeing clients, and the virtual assistant is still handling the operations. Same income, same profession, same credentials. One of them has a job and the other one has a business. Guess which one is closer to being able to make a real vacation next year? I want to be careful right here because I don't want you to hear this as a moral judgment of clinician A. It's not. Clinician A is not failing. She's working hard. She's doing the work that she's trained to do in the way that she was trained to do it. The problem is not her effort and it's not her ability. The problem is the structure she is operating inside of. She has inherited a structure that the profession hands down without examination. And that structure has a ceiling built into it. And she's pressing her forehead against the ceiling every week, wondering why she cannot break through it. The structure is not neutral. The structure was built by a profession that did not train its practitioners in business. The structure is why 90% of therapists in private practice plateau at a specific income level and stay there for the rest of their careers. It is not that 90% of therapists are incapable of more. It is that 90% of therapists were handed the same structure, and the structure only produces one outcome. You are going to build a different structure. And that is what this season of this show is all about. I want to tell you something about myself, because I'm not standing on the stage somewhere lecturing you. I'm a clinician too. I built my first practice in 2008 with $50 and a whole lot of nerve. I spent 4 years building a business that was actually a job. And I nearly closed it down in year 4 because I was so exhausted. I could not see my way through. I was working in car sales, of all things, just to pay the bills. I was seeing clients on my evenings and weekends and whatever scraps of time I could find. I did not take a vacation. I missed family events. I was running a therapy practice on top of a sales job, on top of being a single mother. And I thought that that is what building a business looked like. It wasn't. That was building a job. I just didn't know the difference yet. I'll tell you the whole story next week. It's called my parking lot story. But anyways, come back for it, because that phone call is the moment I started to understand what I am telling you today. And the distance between the Jessica who answered that phone call and the Jessica who is sitting right here recording this episode 14 years later is the distance I am going to try to help you close in your own career. Before this episode, I want to tell you what I learned from those 4 years, because it is the foundation of everything else I teach. The clinician who built her practice is not the CEO who is going to scale it. They are different people. They have different training. They make different decisions. They measure success differently. The clinician measures success in clinical outcomes and client well-being. The CEO measures success in sustainability, systems, margins, and the question of whether this thing she built can survive her taking a week off. Both of those are valid, and both of them matter. A practice that is clinically excellent but financially broke is not serving anyone, because it will not be there in 5 years. A practice that is financially excellent but clinically weak is not serving anyone either, because the clients are not going to get better. The real work is being both clinician and CEO, both roles held honestly in the same woman. That 90% of therapists that I spoke about before, most of them cannot hold both. Not because they're incapable, but because no one has ever told them that they had to. Graduate school doesn't teach to us. I have an MSW and I'm a PhD student. In all of the years that I have spent in graduate education in this field, the amount of business training I have received from my programs adds up to zero. Zero. I'm not exaggerating. Our programs prepare us for every dimension of clinical work. They prepare us for policy. They prepare us for cultural competencies, ethics, and supervision. They do not prepare us to run a business. And then they hand us our licenses and send us into the professional world, in which 70% of us will end up in private practice, running businesses that we were never trained to run. Your licensing board doesn't teach it. Your supervisor didn't teach it, because your supervisor is probably also a clinician who has built herself a job and she's just as tired as you are. Your continuing education does not teach it, because the continuing education requirements are about clinical topics, not business topics. Your professional associations do not teach it, because the association is built around the profession, not around the business of the profession. Nobody teaches it. Nobody. And then we're surprised when therapists burn out, underpriced, underserved, and just quit the field altogether in many cases. We blame the individual clinician for failing at the game she was never given the rule book for. Well, here I am. I'm going to teach it. And that is what this show is for. Bi-weekly, I'm going to sit with you for 30 minutes or so and teach you one thing. Some weeks I'll tell you a story like next week. And some weeks I'm going to give you a framework. Some weeks I'll interview someone whose work your practice needs to know about. And some weeks I'm going to say something hard, because being a CEO means that you have to hear hard things and act on them instead of flinching. Today, in episode 1, the hard thing is this: you have built yourself a job. You can keep running it the way that you've been running it, and it will keep giving you exactly what it has been giving you. Or you can decide today that you are going to build something different. not from scratch, not by burning down what you have, by shifting week by week from the clinician who built a practice into a CEO who owns one. That shift is the whole project of this show. I want to call out something else because I think that it matters for the whole season. And I want to establish it now so that we don't have to keep coming back to it. The shift that I'm describing is not an upgrade in ambition. It's not about wanting more for the sake of wanting more. It's not about building a bigger practice because bigger is better. Some of you might even be suspicious of me because, I don't know, maybe you've been burnt by a business coach or the culture that treats every therapist as someone who should be building a 7-figure empire. And you don't want a 7-figure empire. You just want a sustainable practice that does not destroy you. You want to serve your clients well and also have a life. Good. That is the project. The project is not an empire. The project is sustainability with dignity. A practice that makes $150,000 a year, but has a structure that can survive a week off is sustainable. A practice that makes $300,000 a year and has 3 income streams and lets you take 6 weeks off is more sustainable still. The number's not the point. The structure underneath the number is the point. Whatever number you want to make, you should make it inside a structure that does not require your body to be in the chair for every single dollar. That is the shift that I want to see for you. It applies whether you want to make 100,000 or 1 million. Okay, I want to name one more thing before I go, because this is the thing that most clinicians or even people in general are just too afraid to say out loud. And I'm going to say them. You did not train as a therapist 4 years of an undergrad, another 3 to 5 years of a master's, 5 to 8 years of a PhD if you're in there, just so you could be this tired. You didn't sit through graduate school and rack up the loans and log your hours for clinical licensure and do your own therapy and survive the first 3 years in the field so you could end up at 42, making $100,000 and unable to afford a real vacation. Terrified your husband's job will disappear and take your whole household with it. You did it because you wanted to do good work and live a good life. Both, not one, but both. The practice that you have right now can give you one of those on a good week. The practice you are going to build is the practice that gives you both. And that, my friends, is what we are doing here. Here is my one ask for today. If anything in this episode made you feel seen, subscribe to the show. That is all I want from you this week. Do not buy anything. Do not sign up for anything. Just subscribe and come back next week, because next week I'm going to tell you the parking lot story. And it is the story of the night that I almost closed my practice and what the lawyer on the other end of the phone said to make me change everything. This is the Clinical CEO. I am Jessica Echeverry. Build the practice your future self will thank you for.